I'm checking. Perfect. Okay, so we're live now. I'm gonna let people in. Great. Okay, we'll just let people come in for a second. Okay, super. There's just a couple more people. Okay, so welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us at our first EcoArt Salon since we haven't been able to meet in person. So this is our first time that we're going to be online. It's going to be interesting to see how we're going to actually have our breakout session at the end and have a discussion that becomes still going to be intimate. We're hoping to still have that intimate salon feel, but at the same time, we're also going to be streaming live on Facebook. So people can view from there as well, and it will be recorded. So I wanted to introduce today the two presenting artists. We have Leah Raintree and we have Zhang Hongtu. And we really wanted to see them speak together because they really are talking about, bringing our attention to the earth, the soil, the clay, the slow glacial movement of deep time in our landscapes and our interrelationship with that. And so they're really putting focus on that. And so we wanted to see how they actually tackle that focus differently in their practices. And so I wanted to begin with Zhang Hongtu, and he'll present, and then Leah Raintree will present. And then afterwards, we're going to, we will stop our Facebook live streaming, but those of you who are in our Zoom room, you'll be able to go into kind of two breakout rooms, each with one of the artists to talk more deeply about their work and also the issues that they bring up. So, so I'm very excited about that. Okay, so Zhang Hongtu. I wanted to also see if you wanted help with your PowerPoint, just let me know. So Zhang Hongtu was born into a Muslim family in China in 1943. Zhang graduated from the Central Academy in 1969, and he has lived in the US since 1982. From the mid-1980s to the mid-90s, he created painting, sculptures, and mixed media installations utilizing Mao's image to express his ideas about communist China and the Cultural Revolution. In the last decade, Zhang's works have come to question complex relationships between the traditions of old China and the West today. His most recent works focus on the relationship between nature and the human. Zhang has exhibited extensively, including shows at Princeton University Art Museum, New Museum in New York, and the Museo Picasso in Barcelona, the Kaohsiung Museum in Taiwan, the Metropolitan Museum, and Guggenheim. So welcome, Zhang. It's really wonderful to have you here with us at the EcoArt Salon.
Thank you so much, Alex. Thank you for everyone. I hope I'm not nervous too much. Now, I actually, when I heard this subject about EcoArt, I was kind of asking myself, because I never called my art EcoArt. But one thing is important with my art, which is my art always related to my life experience in both sides, now in China and here. So that's why now Alex just introduced my early work, like during the early 80 to early 90. I did a lot of, especially now after the 1989 Tiananmen massacre, I did a lot of work related to my life in China, especially during the Cultural Revolution, Mao's period. Just a kind of way to express my idea about modern China, about my own life in China. But since my life is so important to my art, so when my life changed, my art also followed my life, because to me that's life. That's something. It's reality. It's not we learn in the book, not we learn from movie, from other people, from teachers. That's important. You have to learn from all different sources. But as artists, I think the most important is your life, because your life is your reality. So I can give you one example how my life made me changed from my concern about the different culture to the environment. I visited China in 1997. That's after more than 10 years left China. So I went to the same river, which where I was sleeping. I was swimming every day, because I'm not really a swimmer, but I just like play with water. But when I visited again in 1997, even with the long distance, you get a smell, very, very bad smell from the water. So the water color is not clear. It's like a soy sauce color. So from this moment, I feel strongly about environment changed. But if we don't go to the reality, maybe we don't know. We still got the water from pipe water, from bottled water. But actually, in the reality, the nature already changed a lot. The reason was the overdeveloped situation. But that moment happened in China. But I went back to my home in New York. I learned more about what happened with the nature in this country. Actually, no big difference. Also damaged, also polluted, maybe in different level. So this is the reason I spend more time, more focus on environmental issue. I don't know, Leah, if you also have experienced the same thing or not.
Well, I don't want to take up your time, Hongtu, but I absolutely agree that personal experience, particularly in relationship to the environment, is really a guide forward. It has been for me.
So, next, I have a question for Alex. So I can show some image for my work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but you're going to control my time. Anytime you said, no, let me know when I should stop. I have a slide presentation. Can you see the images?
Your mic is off, Professor.
Oh.
Yeah. Thank you. So I actually have a PowerPoint as well. Do you want me to share the screen?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. It's okay? You saw
Yes,
picture?
perfect. Yes.
Okay. For example, that's my short statement. I can read it and explain a little bit. Dong Qichang, who is a Chinese painter from Ming Dynasty, later Ming and early Qing, he said about Chinese Shanshui painting. Shanshui means landscape, Shan is mountain, Shui is water. Mountain and water in Chinese word for the art format, which is a landscape painting. To make a painting, one must take nature as teacher and reveal the soul of the mountain and water. I tried to envision how the ancient Chinese Shanshui painting masters would face today's mountain and water. For example, Ma Yuan is a Yuan Dynasty painter 800 years ago. Or to stand before today's river and lakes would be now followed by chemical toxins and industrial waste. Would he still be able to painting his 12-part water album? This kind of consideration guided my new series. It's very simple because I study a lot about traditional painting. Usually I spend many hours in the old Chinese Shanshui painting. It's beautiful, it's peaceful, it's very visually very beautiful. For example, the image of the 12 water album, so all different waves of the waves from ocean, from lakes, from rivers. This painting painted by Ma Yuan in 800 years ago. So my question is, if the artist living in today's situation, can he now still do the same water? So I just started this series, which is I redo the painting. For example, this is one for on the top is one for Ma Yuan's painting. It's about Yellow River. The bottom is my painting. I make the Yellow River painting by Ma Yuan on the top layer, but under the beautiful river waves, it was the dried bottom of the river. The dry bottom of the river is my reality. It's after 800 years after Ma Yuan's painting. So I'll try to create 2 layers. One layer from long time ago, water still clean. The other layer is my reality. Is today's river. For example, this is on the top in Ma Yuan's painting. It's about the sunrise. My painting still sunrise, even with kind of like a Monet style, looks beautiful color. But if you now focus your eye on the bottom of the water, dead fish. That's personally, I didn't see so many dead fish like this kind of river. But I learned a lot. That's the reality. Okay, same. This is the waves from the ocean. The title of the painting from Ma Yuan called Cloud on the Top of the Ocean. I'm still painting the cloud under the ocean, but the ocean is polluted. This one is not Ma Yuan's painting, but on the left, is Qing Dynasty painting about Chinese mountain and water. On the right side is my own painting. I use kind of like cubism to kind of redo the older ancient Chinese traditional Chinese painting, but with my feeling of today's mountain and water. You can see that the tree is cut. It's cut, and the mountain is kind of damaged. The similar idea. The top paintings from Huang Gong Wang is a Yuan dynasty painter. The bottom one is my own painting. I keep the same composition. I just want to mention to people, the composition of the mountain comes from older Chinese tradition, but the mountains changed, the landscape changed, the water has changed. This is a group of my painting about city and how I feel about the city. Of course, we need a city. We need more apartment building for more people to have a place to stay. But but we also dreamed about nature. Anytime, no matter you have what kind of beautiful apartment, when you're going to take a vacation, you go to countryside, you go to the ocean, you go to trees. You just don't leave the city. So that's naturally people need nature, but actually we as a human being, we take nature, we take the space from nature more and more, make the animal, make the nature is kind of damaged. That's view on the top of my painting. Actually, is my feeling when I take the airplane anytime back to JFK in the evening. This is basically is the view like this. But in the same time, I thought about what happened now in the mountain, what happened in the nature, what happened, what was the people's dream about people's life. So I don't think the city, urban life is our dream. We have no choice. We have to live in there to find a job, to make ourselves. But that's not a healthy lifestyle. The same concept I made 4 monkey images. This is another one, not belong to the 4 series. That painting I painted after I got my first granddaughter. So my granddaughter born in 2012, 8 years ago. This baby made me think more and more, not a lot more, about what is the relationship between human being and nature, between our lifestyle in the big city and the life in the real nature. So I'll just continue my painting related to this kind of concern, related to the concept of nature and human life. Okay, the next few slides is my recent painting. I wrote a statement for a magazine, but I don't want to read it. It's too long. You can read it much faster than I do. So I think well, I can go to slides directly. This is bison. I was invited to a residence in Kansas State University. To the museum, beach museum, they bring me to the conservation area. So I saw bisons. Reminded me my first time saw bison. It was more than 60 years ago. but are still very interesting with the bison's image. And later, I learned more about bison, about history of American bison in this country, about so many stories happened. I think all today's student audience, you can search about the bison story. So I started this series. That's another bison. Bison living in the shadow of the city building. This one called Morning. Bison from the grassland to the Cuba style, kind of Cuba style mountain to the modern building. This most recently piece also bison. This is one of the my stone relief from the bison series. I think you can read the word. I don't have to read it, but I just want to show my feeling about the bison today. This kind of feeling is not only comes from my travel to Kansas to the grassland, but also from my feeling of the last half year, COVID-19, the quarantine. I also now stay at home, but I dreamed about prairie. I dreamed about grassland. So in the same time, I thought I make relief. On this relief, the image of bison kind of comes from a stone, but actually the stone I find also in Kansas City. The same area bison was born. So that's it. That's all the image for today's presentation. I don't know if I said clear or not, but we still have time. Later, you can ask me questions.
Great, thank you so much, Zhang Hongtu. We will have a little of questions that we'll and then we get into the breakout rooms. People will have an opportunity. I'll talk further, and we'll come together at the end as well, so we can all share our thoughts. So thank you so much for that. And I just wanted to note that Eileen Wang is here in the Zoom room, and I know that she worked closely with you in Kansas, right, on that project, the last project that you showed. Just wanted to mention. So Leah, we would love to hear from you. Leah Raintree is a Brooklyn-based artist raised in rural Virginia. She her practice focuses on the human condition to Earth, engaging questions at the intersection of art, ecology, science, and perception. She works across drawing, photography, and sculpture to distill correlations between human and geologic scales, with an interest in how we frame and experience time, matter, scale, and phenomena. She has recently had solo exhibitions at the Noguchi Museum in Queens, New York, at the Reynolds Gallery in Richmond, Virginia, and at JDJ in New York. She's been included in recent group exhibitions at the Katonah Museum of Art in New York and PhotoIreland Foundation, Dublin, Socrates Sculpture Park, Highline Art in New York, and she is also currently an artist in residence at the Lower Manhattan Cultural Council's Arts Center at Governor's Island. So you could visit her there, right? So Leah, welcome.
Great, perfect, Alex. Thank you so much for inviting me into this conversation. And Hongtu, I was really happy to hear a little bit more about your practice. So I'm going to pull up my images and we'll get started right away. Let's see. see if that does it.
Yes, we can see it.
Mhm. Okay, perfect. And hopefully that's in full screen for everyone.
I think it's just jumping into full screen now, so we might have to wait a second.
Mhm.
It's not showing yet on my screen. Can others see it right now, or is it just me?
Okay.
No, it's black.
Okay.
It's showing up for me.
Do you want to try to do it one more time? Just maybe it's stuck or something.
All right, let's see. All right. And did that bring it forward?
Yeah, I can see it. It's not full screen yet, but I can see the image. Perfect.
Okay, thanks for your patience, everyone. All right, so when I was thinking about Alex's proposal of discussing deep time, I wanted to start with this image from 2010, which is also a really significant moment within the range of my practice. At that time, and actually when I first met Alex, I was working through a far more conventional drawing practice, ink on paper. And around 2010, that field of drawing really expanded in a major way. To considerations of the human relationship to the earth, how we use and often abuse it, how it shapes us, our interconnection with the planet, and also how we study and represent the earth. So these were all kind of things that were just beginning to percolate then. As you can see, this is a process image, and this is me. I'm working with Marcellus shale. So it's a stone from the Appalachian Basin. It's a formation that came about 400 million years ago, and it's primarily where hydraulic fracturing or fracking happens on the East Coast. So when I started this project, it was in the context of a lot of open debates around fracking being banned in the state. And so in the context of all of these debates and statistics, I became really interested in actually handling the material that was implicated in these conversations. I was interested in its time scale. I was interested in bringing my own body into contact with this material that we're extracting resources from. So the title of this work is Estimated Ultimate Recovery, EUR. That's a term borrowed from the oil and gas industry that denotes how much resource they anticipate being able to extract from a given well. And my process was fairly simple. I'm on about a 10 by 15 foot piece of paper. And I brought the shale onto the paper and I began striking it. I worked with the shale for about 6 to 8 hours, just following the natural fracturing pattern of the stone itself. And I worked until the stone was fully dispersed within the paper. This is the work that's installed. You can see at certain points, my working process actually punctures all the way through the paper. I love the kind of unexpected effect of it almost becoming like architecture, like ancient architecture, or a map, certainly a fairly damaged terrain. And this is just a scale image to give you a sense of what it is to be in front of the piece. And a detail, again, to kind of emphasize that mark making for me began to expand beyond, right, again, working with with ink on paper and into stone, right? The iron from, or the rust from my hammer, the rubber from my boots. These were all elements that came into the conversation. Also at the time, in 2010, the BP oil spill, or the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, occurred. And this really changed how I was working. One of the things that was fairly significant to me was the role of technology in bringing us closer, into close proximity with this disaster. So dropping probes down into the deep ocean, an environment that we basically understand as well as we understand deep space. Right, so there was this remoteness, but also this strange proximity to the oil that was kind of unstoppably coming out of the well onto the ocean floor and affecting human and non-human environments. So around that time, even though it took a while to actually present itself in the work, I really started to also think about human frameworks, technology, and how imaging the earth actually becomes a form of artifact, a human artifact of us trying to understand ourselves within this fairly complex relationship to the planet. So just a few early experiments with mark making on stone. This is a series of lithographic prints. This is obviously the lithographic stone. I was working with the etymology of lithography, which means to write on stone, and striking the stone by powers of 10. So this is a process image of a work that's called, that's 10 squared. So I struck the stone 100 times, and this was the resulting image. There's a very thin stone that actually during the printing process cracked and made this one beautiful sheer strike across the surface. And then this is 10 to the third. So drawing 1,000 lines with my hands across the surface of this really beautiful lithographic stone that was at Fons Mausoreal Centrum, which is where I produced this series of prints. And this is a detail to give you a little bit of a closer image. And again, to bring back that conversation with drawing. So this is a series that occurred after Hurricane Sandy. It's titled Rockaway for probably apparent reasons. So this was late 2012, maybe early 2013. While they were remediating the beaches, bulldozing the sand, extracting domestic and industrial materials that had been embedded by the storm, I was walking and photographing the objects as they were kind of dissolving into the earth. So mark making became something that wasn't something I would only do, but also I would locate these marks within right, the soil. Here's an example of one of the final photographs. Everything was taken, even though they kind of have a scaleless sense to them. They could be from an airplane or something of that nature. They're all taken from my perspective looking down at the earth. So it's simply my height framing the object that I'm finding. So that play with scale is something that also reoccurs across projects. I liked in this work that you could occasionally identify something that was connected to human use, right? So I think this is maybe a makeup bag, but there's also a degree of abstraction as, right, the human material, non-human material begin to kind of commingle together and dissolve. And then the only object that I took from those walks is a small doorknob. So this is a marble doorknob. I was really interested in it being material that's extracted from the earth and then reconfigured for human hands, right, for the function of opening a door. And then this massive phenomenon takes the material back to the earth. And when I found it on the beach, it really felt like I was encountering a small planet that had fallen to the earth. So it also set up a lot of future thinking for me, particularly around scale. Around that time, given my experience and love of working experimentally with stone, I started to research the work of Isamu Noguchi, the sculptor. And this is Noguchi in his stone yard in Japan in 1968. He's working on a beautiful sculpture titled Another Land, which is from 1968 as well. And it was the inspiration and the title of the project that I would then go on to do in response to his work and the collection at the Noguchi Museum. So the title of my series was Another Land After Noguchi. So simultaneously to that research, the European Space Agency, or ESA, had also reached its destination of a 10-year mission to Comet 67P. And its Philae probe would orbit the comet for 2 years. The mission was to photograph this piece of matter deep in the universe from a 360-degree perspective. So every surface, every bit of terrain on this comet was photographed. One thing that I really found to be interesting was the image's relationship to sculpture. So as the probe moved around the comet, the relationship between the comet, the technology, and the light, as they changed, so would the image. So both of these two images are from Comet 67. So this story that Noguchi was another, this Earthrise, a very familiar image. Earthrise was taken in 1968 as well. So many credit it with beginning the modern environmental movement. It's interesting, the astronaut that took this image described it as needing to go to the moon to discover the Earth. Right, so I think that really says something, that just the power of these images in shaping perception. So I took all of these ideas and decided to photograph Noguchi's sculptures as if they were matter untouched by human hands, untouched by the sculptor, but rather found deep in the universe. So in a sense, I worked with light and the photographic frame to treat Noguchi's sculptures as if they were distant matter out in the universe. This is Noguchi's Maharu, reimagined by my photographic framing. So Another Land Maharu is the title of this work. Another Land Sun at Noon, just the simplest kiss of light on the top of this really transformed the object and displaced it as well, took it out of the museum and into this other space. Noguchi in this work, Eminence, that's his title, he described it as being scaled to the human head. So I really enjoyed kind of reworking that image that he had for this work and rather right, scaling it to a celestial object. This is another work, Another Land, Euripides. So Euripides is Noguchi's title. I love this work in particular because of the commingling of right, the mark making of geology, the mark making of Noguchi, and then my own intervention with light and photography. And this final work that I'll show from that series is a model that Noguchi envisioned for a dance theater for Martha Graham. So it's a handheld model that he used to conceptualize the scale of an amphitheater, and that I then kind of scaled yet again to the scale, right, to the scale of a satellite out in space. And these are just a few quick installation images. Maybe I just have one. Yeah. But you can see that this was installed alongside Noguchi's work in the museum. So the next project I'll talk about was completed last year at the Banff Center, where I was an artist in residence. And I was responding to mostly retreating glaciers that are in that landscape. This is Emerald Glacier, where I hiked and took this photograph. So again, interested in these large bodies, this phenomenon, how it's represented through images, through kind of cultural discussion, through statistics, through human acts of measuring. And I was really interested in bringing, again, the material to the body and in a sense, mimicking the behavior of the glaciers themselves. After all, they shape entire landscapes. So I was working with glacial debris, stone, ice to make drawings on photographic negatives. So this is in the negative carrier. It's a 10 by 10 inch negative. And then working in the darkroom, I was able to bring in elements of light, of time, and of scale into the final works. So this is an example of one of the final pieces, kind of an integration of my own mark making and then this more random effects of dragging and pulling and scraping these glacial materials across the surface. So this is, the title of the series is Hand That Breaks the Weather. The title comes from, I guess you could call it a poem that I wrote at the Banff Center. So each piece is titled Hand That Breaks the Weather, followed by the glacier that inspired the work. So Hand That Breaks the Weather. That inspired this. Pato is this piece here. Right, there's something about right, the role of something like scientific imaging and its ability to reveal things through vision that are not apparent to the naked eye. So kind of playing with a lot of the things that happen otherwise as we study and represent these phenomenon. This is Hand That Breaks the Weather Berg, and then Emerald, named after the glacier that I showed at the beginning. And then Hand That Breaks the Weather Saskatchewan is the title of these works, of this work. Each of these prints is, they're each unique, and also they're scaled at 36 by 36 inches, just to give you a sense of how they occupy space. In tandem with working on these photographic prints, I was also working with ceramics. So taking those same stones that I was dragging across the photographic negatives and pulling them through regional clay bodies. So I consider these to be kind of like handheld tablets or small scripts, almost like recording the history of the earth. So the inscription or the mark making is completed by dragging the stones, and then the green is a glaze that's produced by a regional clay that actually melts into these beautiful colors. So not to get too technical, but if you fired at mid-fire with a kiln that has oxygen, you get these beautiful greens. And then this is an additional series, the same materials, simply high fired, and then in a kiln that did not have oxygen, so a reduction fire. So similar to the photographic works, the ceramic works were incorporating time, heat, and atmosphere as really crucial elements in the final pieces. These are some additional ceramic works where I was working with sediments and copper as a drawing material. This is an ongoing series that I'll talk about in a little bit. And then installation images. This was a show at Reynolds Gallery that happened, unfortunately, just before COVID. But the installation, we were really, really pleased with it. Gives you a sense of the scale, and then you can see some of those smaller ceramic works. All right, and then the final project that I'll talk about is current. It's being done with the Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, and specifically their core repository. So the core repository holds one of the world's largest collections of deep ocean sediment cores. So scientists are able to study these cores to understand the history of the planet, but of course, what they're really interested in is kind of a predictive mechanism, right, to understand our present and of course our future, and the health and the future of the planet. So responding to this collection, one of the first things that I was struck by was what is called the working halves, and really working from a place where the scientific process became a subject that I was unpacking in the work. Thinking about the cores themselves being human artifacts that come from the act of scientific inquiry. So this is a core that was taken in 1969 from the research vessel, the Vima. The first thing that scientists do is they split the core into a archiving half, which is not touched, and then a working half, which is available for scientists to study. So this core over the ensuing decades has been heavily studied. So this is the working half. You can see all of the different idiosyncratic ways that scientists have sampled from the sediment. Really, to me, it almost looks like an architectural ruin or an so again, thinking about the core itself as a human act. This core has been studied and has given science or scientists the first really high definition understanding of climate change. So I was in particularly interested in this core. So I photographed the core. This is, it's printed at scale. So each tray is 8 feet, which is based on how long the core is in storage. So everything, each kind of moment where the core is shaped and reshaped is simply a result of the scientific process. Also, there's leftover sediment that's not useful for science that they've allowed me to use in drawings and ceramics. It's called flow-in. So this is an example of the flow-in. And some of the drawings that I'm making, essentially working with a wash of deep ocean sediment that I've converted into a pigment, and then overlaying my own mark making. In this case, I'm working with millimeter and intervals because of the way that scientists work with the correlation between depth and time. In 3 centimeters, there's often 1,000 years of sedimentation and information that scientists can study. And I'll wrap up with what I've been doing in COVID. While ceramic studios and dark rooms and scientific institutions have been closed, I've really returned to my drawing practice in a major way. In a sense, it's kind of bringing COVID time into the body. I actually started this series directly following Hurricane Sandy, and it's one of the few ways that I work that isn't really research-based. It's really just about material experimentation. So the crushed paper is the terrain, and then I go through a fairly laborious process of mapping the surface with ink as I move along. So this is a process image. These are all slightly older pieces. In my studio, I have a series of 6 of these that are under development. This is a little bit more integrated with the paper itself. And then this very large scale version, which took me a few years to actually complete. It's about as wide as your arm span. So right, that's what I've been working on during COVID. And I thought it also kind of brought us full circle back to that conversation of expanded mark making relative to the earth. So that's it for me.
Great. Thank you so much, Leah. This is fantastic to hear about the trajectory of your work and how you're able to kind of bring it back, right? So I'm just going to ask a couple questions because just for time reasons, and also just to kind of delve a slight more deeper into your work. I'd love to ask Leah first just a bit about your, I know we talked about this before and how, you really are riding on that an interesting kind of tension between science and your interest in climate data, interest in like data that is part of thinking about what is going on with the earth right now and where we're located in terms of like this much longer history. But then at the same time, like you are understanding that science has also historically been what has made an emotional sentiment, kind of like emotional separation from us and nature. I don't know if you might talk about that a little bit in your work.
Right, and also the kind of classic dualism is the separation of the mind and body. And for me, it's actually quite important to bring the body into these considerations, right? When I think about Western science, it's always from a critical perspective, but obviously I'm in full support of climate. Needed. I'm looking from the perspective of an artist, so I'm definitely right. There's an element of storytelling that needs to happen. There's an element of I think that proximity, right? That needs to happen with this information. So thankfully, the scientists seem to understand that actually quite well, and they welcomed me quite warmly. But I don't know if I answered your question precisely, but.
No, it's really interesting to see how it manifests in your practice itself. So no, thank you for that. And I wanted to also turn to Hongtu a little bit about your work, because it's so interesting to see how, within the trajectory of your the range of your work, there's a moment between your Sanshui series and the Sanshui Today series in which you have decided to really engage with the environment and what is going on. And I wonder what that moment was. And also between the time that you worked with the Sanshui Today series and the bison, I think you also mentioned that it was this important break. So I was wondering if you might be able to talk about those important breaks, because I think Leah definitely underlined those moments in your work. So I wonder if you might be able to talk a little bit about that. Here, I'll unmute you. Did I manage to do it? No, I'll try it again. Okay.
Okay. Actually, while talking about my 1997 back to China, see the same river where we were swimming inside, but not in the river, but now it's all polluted. That's the kind of like turning point. But in the same time, I was doing another project called Ongoing Shanshui Project, which is using Monet, Van Gogh, Cézanne style to redo the Chinese traditional painting, Shanshui paint, landscape painting. After a few years, after my know more about the environment. I thought my ongoing century painting looks beautiful, but there's nothing to do with the reality. It's more like about the cultures. It's okay about West, East, different philosophy, different different standard about what is beauty. That's okay. But anything if have a distance with the reality, I don't feel good. I feel that's not me. Everybody can do it. So that's the reason I changed from ongoing century project to Century Today series. And for the Bison project, it's more clear because that's everything happened in 2018 in the fall. Because I think Aline maybe can tell more stories. Aline visited my studio. She gave me an opportunity for solo show in her museum, in Beach Museum. But in the same time, museum, Aline and many people, they invited me to see the nature surround the museum, the tall grass, prairie. I liked so much, especially the bison, because before I go to the museum, that was my first time visit Kansas. So I worked online. I searched online. I said, after my show, I will go to something around this area to see what's going on. I saw the bison image on the TV screen. So I thought, okay, I'm going to see bison because first time I saw bison is 1962 or 60, and yes, 1962. You can imagine how long ago. So in the zoo only 2 bisons. So now I see I thought it's a real nature. It's a real wild bison over there. They have the freedom, but actually still not. Still living in the conservation area. But it's okay. But still, in the same time, I'm concerned about the real wild nature for bison. So with the contrast, the big contrast, which is back to my reality. This total different world, 2 different world. Even Kansas is kind of like not really 100% wild nature, but compared with Manhattan's building, it is nature. So I ask myself now, living in the big city, we concern about nature. That's okay, but we are not really understanding the nature. We have to learn. We have to force ourselves to learn something. So that's another big turning point. So fortunately, Beach Museum and Warren Store Art Center, they invited me another 3 times, maybe 4 times as a residence. So I took thousand pictures. I saw bison. I know bison has different images and blah, blah. Anyway, I know more and more about bison, about the nature, about try to do something to express my idea.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Hongtu. So I'm going to stop right now because thank you so much for your presentations. And we're going to go on to our kind of smaller group discussions. But just to kind of close out a bit for those on Facebook, I just wanted also folks to know that the EcoArt Salon is a monthly gathering. So we'll be having this every month and it's free and open, of course. So you can RSVP either in the Zoom room or watch us on Facebook. And so it's really asking bringing together people, artists, writers, curators, scholars, and the public. And before it was with New Jersey and New York, but now it's international, and it's great to see the international roster of people here to really talk about this interconnected global community that we have. and to talk about the potential that eco art does have during this time of environmental degradation and ecological crises. So it's hosted by Rutgers University Newark, Paul Robeson Galleries, and sponsored by the Clement A. Price Institute on Ethnicity, Culture, and the Modern Experience. And I just want to thank everyone who is joining with us from Facebook Live. And I'm going to turn back to the Zoom room people so we can